The residence of Conservator General National Park Service Ibrahim Guni was full to capacity with friends, relations, and well-wishers who came to share the joyous moment with the family. Eminent personalities in attendance include technocrats, traditional rulers, religious leaders, diplomats, and members of NTA family, among others. The chief imam of New Busa, Malam Shehu Abdullahi, led the solemnization after the payment of 50,000 naira bride price and the fulfillment of other rights by the groom's representative. A befitting reception was organized for the couple at the Sabuke Square, featuring sword crossing in honor of the groom, Salah Aldin, who is an assistant road commander in the Federal Road Safety Corps, and his bride, Fatima, was a beautiful sight to behold. The traditional cutting of the cake and other side attractions were not left out of the colorful reception. The lovebirds also speak on their attractions.
Today is an unforgettable day in my life, at least a very happy moment.
What is it that actually got you attracted to this song?
I think her personality, and she's very disciplined and she's well trained.
Alhamdulillah, I'm grateful to Almighty Allah.
The father of the groom, Conservator General of National Park Service, Ibrahim Guni, who was appreciative of family members and guests who shared in the joyous moment alongside other eminent personalities at the event, gave some piece of advice on how to maintain healthy relationships in marriage.
Today is a day of joy. Today is a day of celebration. As Muslims, they have two things to guide them. That is the Quran and the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
I'm very, very happy. I'm even overjoyed. And I will advise them to be patient. In marriage, there is sweet and bitterness. That is how we started. And we are now happy. I want them to be patient to each other. I wish them happy marriage life. I'm the most happiest person today. My advice to her, she should be patient with her husband parents. So any issue that has within them, she should not allow us to know. It's just within them.
Marriage is not an easy institution. It is a very difficult one. And the only thing that keeps the marriage is patience.
My advice is for them to always sit down together, let them understand each other. And whenever any one of them has any issue, shouldn't hesitate to draw the attention of the other party.
By virtue of placement, the husband is placed above the wife. The wife is under the husband. So my advice to the wife is to be an obedient and respectful wife.
I wish the couple excellent life, excellent health, and all-round prosperity.
I wish the couple God's guidance in their home. Moving on, the development of any nation to a great extent is the function of its attainment and sustenance of peace in that country. This was one of the take-homes from the Queen of Peace 2021 pageant held in Abuja. Adebola Brooksley Sunday is here with the sights and sounds of the event.
26 participants drawn from the 6 geopolitical zones of the country for 2 weeks went through mentoring on peace and how to enhance that virtue in Nigeria and the world at large. One of the unique selling points of the initiative is that it is a peace pageant and not the usual beauty pageants, and anyone can participate. Organizer of the event says promotion of peace in Nigeria and across the globe, irrespective of tribe, gender, and religion, is the main objective of the project. Before getting to this stage, they were lectured on peace and security by renowned experts within and outside the country.
From the American Institute of Peace and Conflict Resolution, The young ladies, most of them have never known what the Constitution of the Federal Republic looks like until they came under our platform. All of them were forced to get a copy of the Constitution. And as we speak, I told them, this is your God as far as you are Nigerians. And as a trained lawyer, I took them through a series of lectures on supremacy of the Constitution, issues regarding rape, crime and prevention and penalties, and also an authority from the Nigerian police force. A senior police officer came to camp. They stayed 2 weeks with us.
From north to south, east to west, the queens showcased themselves. There was no dull moment as the audience were thrilled by various performers. It was also an opportunity for these messengers of peace to also provide solutions to current challenges facing the nation.
We must believe in it, but even not to believe in it, we must work at it. A nation divided against itself grows at the mercy of the weakness.
We need in this country is peace, and that can only be attained if all of us come together like this to create awareness, to bring all the stakeholders together and make everybody realize that nothing can be achieved in this country without peace. We need to be peaceful, irrespective of your tribe, irrespective of your religion, irrespective of your political affiliations. We must be peaceful.
What we need to do is to continue to maintain peace, but then we need to still go out there, not just me, every other person, go out there and tell people, sensitize, talk to people, teach them the basic things that bring peace.
The lead queen from the 6 geopolitical zones will have a role to keep promoting peace in Nigeria, while the international queen shall be responsible for promoting peace through Nigerians living abroad.
Sir, and like we always ask here on People and Events, what would you be remembered for when you take your last breath? Ensure to make memorable memories. I am Gufan Shaji. Nation cannot be overemphasized. In this next package, Wasiu Rauf tells us that the late professor of criminology, Professor Femi Adekunle, has been described as a true nationalist who contributed in no small measure to the academic world and Nigerians' fight against corruption. This was at the outing and Thanksgiving funeral service in honor of the late icon in Elisha, where family, friends, and relations gathered to pay their last respect.
He came into this world in 1943 into the Odekunle Osu descendants and lived for 77 years, with a life full of impact on his family, society, and the nation in particular. Indeed, it was a celebration of life of Professor Femi Odekunle, passed on to the great beyond on 29th December 2020. The Methodist Cathedral or Takwepe Elisha attracted dignitaries from all walks of life to the outing and Thanksgiving service, particularly from the education sector, who acknowledged Professor Odekunle's sterling contributions as invaluable, describing him as a true nationalist and a man of integrity. Often referred to as the first professor of criminology to be criminalized for unknown crime by former head of state General Sani Abacha, Professor Odekunle was one-time government representative for ASU Negotiation Team and Vice Chairman Tet Fund Research Development, while until his demise a member of the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption and also Pro-Chancellor Federal University of Technology, Minna, Niger State.
Very honest, courageous, intelligent, and patriotic man.
all that he stood for. If Nigeria imbibe it, Nigeria is going to be a better nation in terms of his fight against corruption and what he stands for as a Nigerian.
A great man. Personally, myself and my family will miss him.
Presiding over the outing and Thanksgiving service in honor of late Femi Odekunle was the Bishop of Ilesha Methodist Church, Nigeria, Most Reverend Amos Akindeko.
Judas Iscariot sold his soul for 30 pieces of silver in Matthew chapter 26, verses 14 to 16. Some Christians will sell out.
Late Professor Odekunle will be sorely missed by his family and relations, whom they described as a detribalized Nigerian.
My father, moved towards Christ. And concerning the issue of how he impacted my life, what I am today is by the grace of God. I impacted some discipline, some morals into me, and has made me who I am today.
I know him as a man of integrity and character.
He was a strong believer in justice, and he was an avid hater of corruption.
He taught me, say the truth. If you have any problem, come to me. So the relationship wasn't just basic, it was extremely deep.
Wherever he was teaching and trying to impact knowledge and dedicating his time and resources towards the things he thought that were important, things like integrity, things like honesty, things like charity, things like
He felt that as Nigerians, we should be proud of our heritage. So he was happy to live in the north. Even though he was from the south, he married men from the north. He was all about one Nigeria.
Resident sir, and like we always ask here on People and Events, what would you be remembered for when you breathe your last? Ensure to make memorable moments. I am Gufan Shaji.
Arise, O Nigerians! Let's applaud the courage of Flight Lieutenant Abayomi Dairo, aka the Aggressor, for his skillful and dogged escape from the bloodthirsty bandits in the forest of Zamfara State. 3 hearty cheers also to all military and security personnel who are tirelessly protecting fellow Nigerians from insurgency and banditry while maintaining peace and order. Nigerians are proud of Abayomi Dairo and all our gallant men and women in uniform for sacrificing so much to keep us safe. We admire your courage and we say thank you. God bless the armed forces. God bless Nigeria. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
I'm the Chief Resident Engineer and Project Supervisor of the Second Niger Bridge Project. The Second Niger Bridge Project is a project that has been conceived for a very long time, but it has finally come to life during this present administration. This project has a lot of socio-economic benefits, and it has impacted positively on the lives of the host communities, both in Anambra State and Delta State. The people are very happy. The host communities, they partnered with us because apart from the social benefits, indigenes are also employed on this project. We can see how their lives are being improved.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
This is the network service of the NTA.
Hello and welcome. I am Cyril Stover. Now, providing access to safe and sufficient water resources to meet the social, cultural and economic needs of Nigeria is the vision of the Federal Ministry of Water Resources. Now, in pursuing this goal, the ministry aims at enhancing public health, food security, poverty alleviation, while maintaining the integrity of the country's freshwater ecosystems. Now, at the helm of affairs of the ministry in the 6 years of the Buhari administration so far is a civil engineer with some 3 decades of experience in both the private and public sectors. Suleiman Hussaini Adamu, Fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, Fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Engineering, member of the American Society of Civil Engineers, and a member of COREN, that's the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria. He joins me to assess the impact of the Water Resources Ministry under the Buhari administration. Minister, welcome to One on One.
Thank you, Cyril.
Right. At the start of this administration, which you serve, there was a commitment to addressing the numerous problems faced by the Nigerian society, and one of them, of course, very important, water resources. Now, take us through how you assessed the problems and challenges at that time, and how you started addressing them.
Well, I think 3 weeks after coming into office, I organized a retreat and invited many key stakeholders in the water resources sector so that we could sit down and assess the sector as it was then and to chart a way forward. And by the end of that 2-3 day retreat, we had come out with what we call roadmap, Water Resources Roadmap 2016 to 2030. Under the roadmap, we looked at issues like policy issues like the water bill, the water resources policy and the irrigation policy, that we had to deal with that. We looked at the issue of water supply and sanitation. We looked at, we had a plan for revitalizing the river basins. We looked at also issues that had to do with irrigation, hydropower development, and also alternative sources of funding. And then, of course, transboundary water issues like Lake Chad and the Niger Basin Authority. So we had this agenda also anchored around the Sustainable Development Goals, the Water Resources Master Plan. So we had we came up with a tripod to deal with the SDGs on one leg, the Water Resources Master Plan, and the roadmap itself. But the roadmap was aligned to both the SDGs and the Water Resources Master Plan. And since then, that's what we've been implementing. It's important to note that we could not look at 4 years or 8 years, but we looked at 15 years because the water sector is huge and it's organic and dynamic. It goes with issues that have to do with population growth. It goes with issues that have to do with like climate change and so on and so forth. So you cannot have a snapshot and say this in 4 years exactly this is what's going to happen. So things spill over, and that's why we took a 50-year horizon to deal with the situation to the year 2030. And coincidentally, that is the end year for the Sustainable Development Goals. So we're working in tandem with that.
Now, situate this for us properly, if you will. Generally, when we talk about resources, especially water resources, and the citizen would think, well, this is all about an all-important commodity. Now, situate for us the position of the Federal Ministry of Water Resources vis-a-vis the position of states in the provision of water, especially the question of water supply.
Well, water is the concurrent list of the Constitution, but it has defined roles for the various tiers of government. For instance, at federal level, we deal with policy issues, we deal with international conventions and agreements, and we also deal with bulk water. That is to say, we support states in terms of provision of bulk water because that's the most costly aspect, like building of dams and so on. The states, on their part, are responsible for treating water, transmitting and distributing and billing and so on and so forth, along with the local governments. That's the way it's supposed to be, ideally. And that is why states have water boards and the federal government does not.
Right.
So if the problem being faced regarding water supply is that states over time have not been investing as they should, and also commensurate with the rise in population. There is no alignment between the population and the water supply infrastructure. Of course, there are other challenges: capacity building, high cost of water infrastructure, energy crisis, and so on. But it's all about planning. It's all about prioritization. If there is a political will to address the water issue, I think it's something that states can do. After all, years ago, state governments were the one providing all the infrastructure, but most of the infrastructure that you see for water supply, especially in urban areas, are schemes that were built 30, 40 years ago. And since then, there hasn't been much investment by other states to move in tandem with the population growth. You have to plan for the future. They don't do that. And therefore, you find out that most urban schemes are for populations that are like 40 years ago, the numbers that are 40 years ago, so, providing water for a population of today, and with dilapidated infrastructure as well, because even the existing schemes have not been operated fairly. Today, our statistics show that about most of our water schemes in urban areas are operating at about 40% and below installed capacity. So there needs to be investment on the part of local, state governments, and that hasn't been forthcoming. So a situation came whereby the federal government itself found itself also getting involved in provision of treatment plants, or almost providing entire schemes. But even then, we've been facing challenges. Some states cannot even manage it to operate and maintain. And it's not something that the federal government is cut for. So lots of challenges, but bottom line is, I think many states have not been prioritizing water, and it has not been, something that they think is very important, probably because the water falls from the sky.
It's a tough call, isn't it? Seeing that at the end of the day, the federal government certainly would be judged by how much success it has achieved in the area of water resources management, and easily the first thing that will come to mind, rightly or wrongly, would be, well, did the citizens have, access to safe and sustainable water supply? So how are you encouraging a turnaround?
Well, we're doing a lot. First of all, after we had a diagnostic report in 2017, which indicated that, especially for urban schemes, in 1992, 30% of the population was enjoying pipe-borne water, but by 2015, it had dropped to 7%. And that was a serious wake-up call for us. And that led us to develop the WASH Action Plan, Water Sanitation Hygiene Action Plan, which was launched by President Buhari on 8th November 2018. And in the course of that, he declared a state of emergency on the water, sanitation, hygiene sector. So that's number one, at least to kind of, highlight this problem. If people didn't know, now they know that there is a big problem associated with water. But even before then, we had, based on the Millennium Development Goals, we assessed the Millennium Development Goals and realized that we had only achieved 68% instead of 75% that we should achieve at that time, which MDGs ended in 2015. So at that time, only 68% of the population in Nigeria had access to water. But then, if you discretize it to look at the rural population, just 50% of the rural population had access to water. And that led us to, in 2016, introduce the Partnership for Expanded Water Supply, Sanitation and Hygiene Program, which was launched in November 2016 by the Vice President. The idea has been and still remains to incentivize the states to invest more in rural water supply. So far, as I'm talking to you now, we're working with 12 states. We did a pilot program in 2 states, Ogun and Kano, to test the program. After that, now we're working with 12 states. The idea is we're taking 2 local governments, and the states are taking 2 local governments, and we want to ensure that the rural populations of these 4 local governments have 100% access. So this another scheme that we try to introduce. Basically a partnership between the states and local governments. Then, of course, even under the urban water supply, we created a new budget line to support states with the urban schemes. We launched the new National Water Resources Policy, which stipulates that the federal government can support states with up to 30% of the cost of urban schemes. And we've been, even some of our projects, our existing projects, we repackaged them and partnered with states. So they took a certain portion of the project, like Zobe water supply, like Zungeru Wushishi water project, like Ota water supply in Enugu. We're partnering with the state government. We took a certain portion, not necessarily on a 30-70 basis. In most cases, these projects are always on the 50, 60, or 40, 60 basis, you know. So we're doing those ones with those states. And then, you know, we are trying to sell this idea to the states also to corporatize their agencies. We're doing under the what we call the Urban Water Sector Reform Program, which has just ended with the World Bank, to corporatize, to put new laws to make sure that their water corporations are working like commercial entities. They can do that so that they can achieve cost recovery. And you know, kind of reduce the stress on their state budgets. And of recent, the most recent intervention we've done was we worked with the World Bank on the basis of the diagnostic report that I mentioned of 2017 and the WASH Action Plan. We've come up with a plan to support some states and the PWASH program with $700 million facility from the World Bank under what we call SOWASH, Sustainable Urban and Rural Water Sanitation and Hygiene Program, which was just approved last month by the World Bank. And then finally, in the controversial water bill, we have a clause, a provision for a WASH fund, Water Supplies, Water Sanitation and Hygiene Fund, that is supposed to provide for states to draw from, to be able also to invest more in the water supply, in their water supply and sanitation programs. So all the necessary incentives have been put in place. But the public needs to know that it is not the responsibility of the federal government to provide water in your households. That is the responsibility of the states. And that is why the federal government does not own a water board.
All right, we'll come back to the issue of the water bill later on, but let's just push it further on the WASH, Water Sanitation and Hygiene Program. The states, as you have also mentioned, are supposed to have domesticated these policies, and Keating, how would you assess the response so far?
Encouraging. As a last count, we had about 24 states out of 36 that have keyed in. Although they are moving very slowly, it has taken time from 2018 to date. But every time I have an opportunity to talk to the state governors, I remind them. I've been able to address them at the Governors Forum. I've addressed them under the auspices of National Economic Council. But, you know, it's an issue of prioritization and political will.
Yes, but citizens would say this is a matter of the welfare of the citizens, health, hygiene, sanitation, and ordinarily you would expect immediate and full domestication and keening.
I think we've tried our best. We're giving all the incentives. Even this issue of the SOWASH, the World Bank facility, there have been certain conditions that the states need to meet. And those that are very serious about, at least we've created the awareness. Now, we can't go and force the states to do what they do. I think citizens also have to do their own bit. And what I'm saying now about all this is for the citizens. I hope those that are listening to me and know that their states are lagging behind will question these things. But the Constitution is very clear. We cannot go and interfere or force state governments to do what they need to do. But we're also worried because at the end of the day, it's the Federal Ministry of Water Resources as an agency of the federal government that goes back to report to the United Nations about our progress in SDGs. There are reports to the Sanitation and Water for All organization, all those organizations, UNICEF and so on, that we deal with. You know, and they all know the problem anyway. But I think we'll just have to continue to make the point. I've made this point that in Nigeria, people find it easier or more important to pay for telephone credit than to pay for water. And some state governments find it a lot better to build dual carriageways and street lights and airports at the expense of water. But we're making the case for water, and I hope that the states concerned, those that are lagging behind, will begin to have a turnaround. But we can only do advocacy.
Now, closely tied with hygiene would be the campaign against open defecation. I know you might look at the figures and say there's been progress, but we would ask, yes, in the year 2000, Nigeria was placed, according to the figures, about 6. All right. But we don't know exactly what the situation is today, but it's a matter that you'd squirm to talk about. Open defecation, you understand? Just one local government had been declared open defecation free, and we have 774.
Well, honestly, this is not a trophy Nigeria will be proud of, because we're #1 in the world today. India has exited, and they had a concrete plan and mobilized the entire country and was able to stop 600 million people from open defecation. We are trying our best. Like you rightly said, we started with one local government in 2017. We have 61 today. If not for the COVID lockdown, probably would have had more. I say it's progress, but I must be the first to admit that it's very slow progress. I would have expected us to be much up there by now. But I think we'll get there. I think the awareness is coming gradually, and the good thing is that the number of local governments that are becoming open defecation free now, the rate is coming faster than it was before. So, and at that time, when we started, we were looking at local governments as the political entities that we'll use as our yardstick, as our unit of measurement. But today we're reaching a point where we're likely to start looking at the first state that is open defecation free. So progress is being made. I know 2 states that at least half of the LGAs are already open defecation free. So we'll continue to work on that. I've set very ambitious targets for the Clean Nigeria campaign secretariat this year, this year in particular. They may not necessarily meet it, but I hope they will get close to it. Our target still remains to end open defecation in Nigeria by 2025. If India can move 600 million people out of that practice, I see no reason why we cannot move 47 million people when we started. The recent WASH norm, what we call WASH norm report, that's the survey that we conduct, showed that as at between 2017 and 2018 and 2019, we've gotten about 1 million people out of the practice. From 47 million, it has come down to 46 million, but it's still, for me, it's still dismal. But at least we have seen the indices moving in the right direction. So, but you know, India was able to achieve this because it's also a federal state. Mm-hmm. And they made sure all the states, all the 30-something states of India were mobilized, and they keyed into this program. And that is what we're trying to get all our state governments to do as well. So far, we still have many states lagging. But like I said, it's promising. And I still feel that we're on track.
Well, good enough at the local level, but even in urban centers, you still find this is a huge challenge. And that's not even excluding the FCT, which is the most modern, fastest growing modern city in the country.
Well, that is very true. We're engaged with the FCT administration as well. Right now, we are looking at some designs of public toilets. And in one of our engagements with the FCT administration, the minister indicated that we would like to partner with the private sector in providing public toilets, and they will be willing to even provide access connection, water connection, without charge, which is going to be for public toilets. So, like I said, a lot of awareness is going on. As a ministry, what we do is we just do the advocacy. We're working with the National Orientation Agency. We have adopted a technique that we call community-led water sanitation. That's what has worked for us. And we'll continue to do that. Then, of course, Executive Order number 9 is there, which also gives room for prosecution. So there is a law. There is a bill now before the National Assembly, sponsored by one of the senators, following from the Executive Order number 9 that was signed by Mr. President. And while I'm not an advocate that we should start jailing people for open defecation, I feel we should put all the necessary things in place, but this carrot and stick approach, at least knowing that the law exists, that open defecation is not permissible, at least also sends a message to people that they are doing the wrong thing. But you know, there are cultural issues. In some places, it's taboo in this country to build a toilet. And this is what we're working, and that's what the community-led water sanitation approach is wonderfully doing for us, because we're breaking that barrier with many of the communities that they don't see the import of providing toilets in their houses. It's work in progress. We're starting from zero, but we're heading somewhere.
All right, Minister, let's come to the issue of dam construction. And easily would like to know the number of dams right now, the state those dams are in, and if they're performing, optimally.
Well, I always like to give credit to previous governments in the 70s and the early 80s for all the work that they have done. We currently in the country we have over 200 dams. But unfortunately, many of these dams are not properly utilized. Federal government has done close to 200 dams providing bulk water, and with the expectation that states would now tap into these dams, provide the necessary treatment, transmission and distribution facilities to provide water to their citizens, and also provide irrigation infrastructure. But over the years, that hasn't been done. Most of the irrigation infrastructure today are owned by the federal government. This shouldn't be so. And under our irrigation program, we are now providing like 1 million hectares, we hope, will be developed by the states and the private sector for irrigation. We have not seen that happening yet, but we're still advocating for the private sector, mainly because they don't want to invest too much in infrastructure. They would rather have made schemes to tap into maybe when they punch the numbers, they see that the investment cost is high for them. But in the current economic situation, the federal government is finding it a challenge to be able to develop all this infrastructure. Now, dams also, they have a lifespan just like we human beings. And they are what called design life. So some dams have a design life 40, 50 years, some 100 years, some 1,000 years. Depends on the size, depends on the catchment, and depends on the hydrology of the area. So many of these dams, because they have not been put to use, the reservoirs are not being operated, they've been locked, water comes in, spills out, and then the sediment that comes along with the water is silting of the dams. So the original storage capacity has been reduced considerably. In any case, it is always bound to happen, but the fact that they have not been put to proper use has speeded up that process of siltation. And to the extent that some dams are, for oil intent and purpose, dead. Their lifetime has expired, but they are more like ornamental ponds and so on. But we are working, like even there's a simple thing, aquaculture. These dams are there even for communities or some private enterprises to invest in aquaculture. I've been promoting these dams in 2016. I've seen very few responses to this. So bottom line is state governments again need to invest. The federal government can only do as much as it can. But these dams are there, they're available for the states, for the local governments to utilize.
But then the federal government still makes forays into this sector. I'm talking, for instance, about the Farinrua project in Nasarawa State, where the government, federal government has come in. Tell us about that project and what led up to this.
Well, that project was started by the Nasarawa State government in 2003, I think. And then by the time the administration of Senator Abdullahi Adamu left, the funding was no longer coming after about 5 billion naira had been spent. It's such a sorry situation. The turbines had been brought. There was a foundry, manufacturing the pipes in that place. If you go there, all the equipments are there. So in 2018, the Nasarawa State government, after many years trying to find a way to fund it, they couldn't. They now sought the support of the federal government, and the federal government took it over. That project has a potential of at least 20 megawatts of electricity. It has a huge potential for irrigation. There are communities that can also be served with water supply. So the project was repackaged, and we want to try to finish the dam for the benefit of the people of the state, do the irrigation scheme as well, and probably a small regional water scheme for Wamba local government or the environs and the Kwara community. But the aspect of the hydropower, we'll try to see whether we can get some kind of private sector involvement so that we can concession that aspect to them. But it's one of those things, as a ministry, you also try to balance federal government presence in all the states of the federation.
Right.
And so I think that informed the president's decision to now take over this program. And it's like a low-hanging fruit that probably we spend a little more to provide maximum benefit to the people. But in any case, 5 billion naira of those years, 2003 to 2007, you can imagine, if you imagine the amount in dollar terms, and today, it's been quite a huge investment.
Surely you might find other projects around the country that are in perhaps such a state.
Yeah, but we can't be everywhere. I told you when I came into office, I inherited 116 projects spread across the country. 37 dam projects, 38 irrigation projects, and about 41 or 43 water supply projects. And so far we've completed about 34. And I believe by the end of this administration, we'll probably do about 40 or 50. And that's the best we can do. There's federal presence everywhere. We've revived many projects, Ile-Ife Dam, Kwantagora Auna Dam projects, lots of irrigation projects that we're working on, like Middle Ogun, Lower Ogun irrigation projects. So many things. Adada Dam in Enugu State, Ogashuku Dam we completed in Delta State. So quite everywhere there's quite a spread of projects, and the federal government will do what it can.
Well, there's an aspect of water resources management that goes beyond the boundaries of Nigeria. I'm talking about water resources management and international collaboration. And a big one that comes to mind is the Lake Chad and all its challenges. Currently, we understand it's just 10% of its original size. And that has been looked at, and it's felt that it's so huge. What's required? And Nigeria is spearheading this. You tell us about that.
Yeah, first of all, when the idea of what we call Trans-Aqua project, the interbasin water transfer from the Congo Basin into the Lake Chad was mooted, Nigeria committed $5 million to the preliminary studies. But those were preliminary studies. The best the studies were able to do were to identify routes and to say that it is technically feasible to have this project. And they came with a rough estimate of about $14 billion. But a lot of work needs to be done further. We started, after we assessed the situation, we did an international conference in February 2018 where we achieved two aims. Number one, that we reach an international consensus that Lake Chad needs to be saved. because it affects the life of over 40 million people. Number two, we reach a consensus that interbasin water transfer from the Congo Basin to Lake Chad is probably the best way to achieve this effort at saving the lake. The Congo Basin, billions of cubic meters of water run into the Atlantic. If we are able to take just 8%, 8 to 10% of that runoff, that will be enough to sustain this lake for as long as it takes. But then we have a huge challenge. Number one, we have to go over a